Hi everyone, thanks for tuning in for Science Friday with the Trustees. I'm Molly, the island's education manager with the Trustees of Reservations. If you aren't familiar with the Trustees, we are Massachusetts' largest conservation and preservation organization with 118 properties throughout the Commonwealth. For this week's lesson, we are focusing on weathering and erosion. So there are a few materials that you'll need for this week. First, and probably most important, a cookie. A chocolate chip cookie would be perfect so that you have some lumps in your cookie, but any type will do. You'll also need a toothpick or a skewer. I have a longer skewer, but a toothpick is fine as well. And a straw. I have a wooden straw here, so if you have any non-single-use straw at home, that's what we're looking for. And then finally, you'll want a glass full of water. So to start with, let's talk about weathering and erosion. These two terms are somewhat big words. And to help us think about these words, we have a hammer and a bulldozer. Can you guess why I'm showing you a hammer and a bulldozer when we talk about weathering and erosion? So let's first think about the word weathering. Weathering is when something is broken down. So imagine you have a hammer and you're chipping away or hitting a hammer on something. You can break that down. Weathering is like a hammer. It breaks things down. Erosion is like a bulldozer. So erosion moves material after it's been broken down. Just like a bulldozer will move rocks, clay, sand, dirt from one area to another. Erosion is doing that same thing. And we're going to learn today what are the different causes of weathering and erosion, and where do we see those examples with our hammer and our bulldozer. So keep those images in your mind, a hammer for weathering and a bulldozer for erosion. Okay, so now let's take a closer look at some real life examples of weathering and erosion. So let's look at this first picture of a road. Obviously something has happened to this road, right? Does it look like something has happened with a hammer? And let's remember, our hammer is our example for weathering. Or does it look like something has happened with a bulldozer? And do you remember what word do we think of with bulldozer? That word is erosion. So when I look at this photo, I see the road is crumbling here. And it looks to me almost like a hammer has hammered away and cracked this road. What do you think caused that to happen? And the picture underneath here might give us a hint or a better idea. So this is another picture of a road, and this has been hammered away at, it's been weathered, but it's also been eroded because this material here, all of this dirt, has gone somewhere else. Can you guess where that dirt has gone? Take a look over here in this photo. The ocean. So just like when you've gone to the beach and seen high tide come up on the dunes and wash away that sand, the same thing is happening here. That water is eroding this road. So that water comes in and moves all of this land out into the ocean, just like a bulldozer. So this is a perfect example of erosion. I have another example here from Wasque Reservation here on Martha's Vineyard. So let's take a look at this photo now. Obviously something has happened, right? Just like our earlier photo of the road. Does it look like the hammer has been put to use here? Any weathering? Or the bulldozer, erosion? This looks like weathering has caused these trees to fall. So we've lost some of the soil here and the trees have fallen. Now this photo is the same area, Wasque Reservation, and what's happened now? What's caused this tree, just like from our earlier photo, to be washed away off the bank? Erosion. Our bulldozer. This water here is eating away at the bank and causing erosion, so we're losing that land and this tree. It's being carried out to sea. And this last photo here will show us that as well. So the ocean here, there are some trees that are fallen off this bank and are down on the sand. And slowly that will keep getting washed out to the ocean due to weathering and erosion. So now we want to figure out, what are those other causes of weathering and erosion? We know, based on these photos, that water has a big impact on erosion. But what about weathering with our hammer? So let's figure out that next with our activity. Okay, so now I'm all set up for the activity portion of our lesson. So remember, you'll want a cookie for this activity. And you can place that cookie in a tray or on a plate, because we are about to do some things to that cookie and it will get a little messy. So first, we are going to imagine this cookie is land. And maybe we can also imagine the chocolate chips in this cookie. Those are rocks and different things that you'll find on land. So remember, we have a couple tools that we're doing with this activity. A toothpick or a skewer. I have a long skewer here. And then a straw. Mine is a wooden straw, but you might have a paper straw or a metal straw. So the first thing we're going to do is walk across our land with our toothpick. So remember, this is land, and let's imagine this toothpick are human or animal feet. So I'll slowly, and you can follow along with me, walk across my cookie. Just walking across the land, just like if you were at Long Point Wildlife Refuge and walking down to the beach, or at Cape Pogue Wildlife Refuge and going out to East Beach for a swim, walking across the cookie. So let's take a look at this. You can see I have a few crumbs here that have come off my cookie. Did you have any crumbs? Did any piece of your cookie or your land fall off? And if it did, what process did we just do? Did we cause weathering with our hammer or erosion like a bulldozer when we walked across this land? The answer is weathering caused that land to break apart a little bit, right? It slowly broke apart just a little bit. Great. So next, we are going to take our straw, and you should have a cup full of water. You can dip your straw into this cup and then put your finger over this end of the straw and then lift your straw out. This will cause you to keep some water within your straw. Once you have that water in your straw, come over your cookie and release a little bit of water. I'm just going to shake my straw, and then there was a bit of a gush of water. A little water comes out of this straw. And then you could come over to your cup, fill your straw with a little bit more water, and drip it over your land. So what do you think is happening now? This is like rain. So let's imagine there's a bit of a rainstorm, and it's raining all on your land. Great. Now let's look closely at our cookie. Has anything happened to it yet from that water? Oops, I can see a few bigger holes from where we walked across the land earlier, but the cookie is still together. So now let's take our toothpick again. And remember, this is us walking across the land. So you can imagine you just went to the beach with your family. It started raining. We just caused all this rain on our land. So now you're going to run back to your car. So you run across your cookie again. Okay, so we ran across. Now let's look at our cookie. Looks a little different now, right? So what has happened here? Did we cause weathering or erosion? Think about what's happened and look closely at your cookie. What's happened to that cookie? It's broken down, so it's been weathered a bit, like a hammer, but then it's also been eroded. Pieces of that cookie have moved off the original cookie or land. So now we almost have a little island over here and a little one here. Little bits of that cookie, that landmass, have been eroded away. So it's been both broken down and moved. So we've seen that hammer and that bulldozer at work. So now what you're going to do is take your straw. And you're not going to fill it with water this time, but you are just going to blow through your straw at your land. So let's imagine we've now had a rainstorm on our land, and now we're about to have high winds on our land. So blow for a few seconds on your land. So what's happened to your cookie? Does it look like anything like my cookie? So we've just had a windstorm. And what process did we see happen with that windstorm? We saw erosion, because more of these pieces moved around my tray. They're now in different areas because the wind blew them that way. So they've been moved, just like a bulldozer moves land, they've been moved to a different area by the wind. Now again, maybe we have another rainstorm coming, and this time it's a bigger rainstorm. So I filled my straw with water and just release. And then I can do it again and release. Do you see your cookie changing at all? Is anything happening with this big hurricane with lots of rain? So there's a lot of rain there. Now, and we can look closely at our cookie. Has the cookie changed at all from all of that rain? The land looks very wet now. But let's see when we walk across it again, what happens. When we walk across this land, what's happening to that land now? Is it breaking apart like a hammer? Or moving like a bulldozer? Or maybe both? Because when erosion happens, that usually means weathering has happened first. And often they go together. So our cookie or our land became very, very wet with that heavy downpour of rain. And now it's been weathered, it's been broken apart and eroded. It's moved a little bit, right? It's not in its original place. So since we see a hurricane happening now, there'll be more high winds because we see wind, water, and human influence on this land. So you can take your straw and now blow on your land again. Wow, our land looks completely different, right? So that wind caused a lot of erosion like a bulldozer because this land has broken apart and it has moved all over the place. So our little cookie island is no longer an island and a landform. But remember, what caused this weathering and erosion was water, wind with our straw, and humans and animals walking all over the land here, especially when it was very wet and already starting to break apart. So can you think about when you're at the beach and you're walking on the dunes, you're causing a little bit of erosion when you walk on the dune, just like you saw happen with this cookie. Okay, so now you can either put your cookie in the compost, or if you dare, you could try to eat it, but make sure you ask your parents first. So now that we've completed our cookie weathering and erosion experiment, I want you to go out to your own yard and see if you can find any examples of weathering and erosion. One idea is to head into your yard and mark one plot. So one area that you can look at every day for the next week. And see during that time period, do you see any processes of weathering taking place with a hammer? Or any erosion taking place in your yard? Maybe after a big rainstorm, you might see some weathering, just like we had that water on our cookie. Or maybe some erosion taking place after that weathering. Thank you for joining me today for this lesson. I hope you enjoyed it just as much as I did. You can find more lessons, online lessons and activities at thetrustees.org/at-home. So Trustees, we're a nonprofit organization. That means we rely on support from people just like you and your family members. So I encourage you to become a member of the Trustees or renew your membership or donate. And you can do so by simply going to thetrustees.org/join us. So thanks again, and I look forward to seeing you next time.